Greetings. I hope you and yours are doing well today, wherever you might be listening to this from. And I hope also that you're having a great remainder of the summer season that we have left before the fall hits. Now, the topic for today I would like to talk about is why we should discuss politics and religion in Freemasonry. Now, this is a very sensitive subject and one that I have not seen anybody talk about, even with all the turmoil and social and political turmoil that's been going on in this country, that's been dividing everybody all across the world. And that seeps into the fraternity as well. And I have seen nobody talk about this, or, even the higher ups, 33, doesn't matter who you are. Nobody's talking about this. Why we are losing the faith in each other through this social and political and misunderstandings of religious divide. So I took it up in my hand today that I will discuss this and see what kind of compromise we can come up with. Now, I would say the one thing people have is that rule that we're not supposed to talk about politics and religion, but you got to look at the fact that majority of our time as Masons is spent in an untiled setting. You are in a tiled setting maybe once or twice a month, right, depending on your involvement, but you got to look at it that you represent yourself as an exemplary person majority of the time, either on social media, at your job place, in your neighborhood, at your home, with your family, in your communities. That's where you represent yourself the most in your character. And those are not tiled settings. So, but also that doesn't give you excuse to, act derogatory towards anybody that you might disagree with, because you promise to hold yourself to a high standard. And I believe that's the divide. I mean, even me as a Muslim person, that somebody could call me a brother in a tiled setting, but in an untiled setting, you could see them on social media, posting these different articles or memes, or that would be offensive to me as a brother. And I would never, in my right mind, would post anything that would degrade any of my Christian, Jew, Hindu, Sikh, anybody, no matter what you believe in, because I promise myself that I will respect everybody and to hold myself to a high standard. Now, to eliminate that, religious and political divide that's currently seeping into the brotherhood as well in the current climate that we're living in, I believe is more interaction with each other. I mean, besides you meeting somebody with once or twice a month in a professional setting, you could say, or a tiled setting, you're encouraged because you promise to be their brother. They promise to be your brother in good times and in hard times. So you should make the effort to maintain that friendship as well, not just put on a front and call them the brother just for the purpose of being there, because that's basically taking God's name in vain as well. I mean, you don't mean it. You're just saying it just to be there. And the term brother is a very serious term and not to be loosely associated with anybody. So I believe these interactions, private interactions, that you having social gatherings with brothers of other faiths and races outside of those areas where you can discuss with them. And the reason why it's important, because how will you be able to empathize with your brother and understand your brother if you're not willing to have these conversations, right? It's like that. It's awkward then, right? Because you might be in an area where you're not supposed to discuss anything, and then on the other hand, they promise to be respectful to you, and vice versa, you to them, and you're in an environment where one person promises to be your brother through thick and thin in all of your life settings, and then on the other hand, they're on social media acting that the way they are, or you overhear something, but if you tell anybody, no one would believe it, then that would cause friction. So how about we get the effort to know one another and sit down with each other in a private area? We can meet up for coffee, we can sit at a restaurant, go to a social event together, and talk about these things that, I have this in common with you. You have this in common with me. We had more things in similar with each other than we realize. And I had this one. I remember I invited this Jewish brother to a meeting one time to present about his faith and how it connects to the craft. And then after that, we sat at the local restaurant till like maybe midnight. It was probably approaching 1 in the morning. Why? Because I come from an Islamic background. He comes from an Orthodox Jewish background. And we walked away learning that our faith was like probably identical with the way we eat, the way we practice, the way some of our beliefs are. And that really humbled me. And we got to know each other as brothers with some of the conversations we were able to have. So I believe those discussions, and no matter what your political belief is, you also discuss those, but in a respectful way, knowing that, okay, you know what, this is where you stand, this is where I stand, and this is where we meet in the middle, on the middle ground, as respectable human beings, and how we portray ourselves to society, and how we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. Because those discussions, we promise ourselves to seek light and to seek knowledge. And, to those resistant to change, such as the older guys that always have a concept that we always done it this way, you have to realize that Masonry is a work in progress. And if you're not a work in progress, then your machine gets all rusted if you're not applying oil to it every now and then to progress with the changing times. And with the times that we have now, where there's a generational divide, there's an income divide, there's a religious divide. You go on these many forums on Facebook, and I posted several videos about Islam and Freemasonry, just to teach people, not to force my faith upon anybody, because we are taught, just like how the founding fathers were, they were deists. Right? It was not particularly based on anything. It was just a collection of everything, because the true master masters all of the faiths and cultures that are incorporated in this world and better applied to your life. So you look at all those comments, they're fighting over this, they're fighting over that, about how to wear this, or how do I believe this, or how does my jurisdiction handle this, how does your jurisdiction handle this. And you got to realize that a lot of that stuff is like on a public forum. So if you're trying to attract the youth, like, how would the youth view you if they're seeing like, yo, these guys are just falling apart with their own internal warfare? How will I learn from them? Maybe I could just watch a couple YouTube videos or read a couple articles and learn what I need to learn, rather than waste my time, energy, resources, monies, etc., etc. So I believe that you should be able to exemplify yourself in a better way in how you're acting in person, on social media, with your family, in your workplace, because 90% of your time of your life is spent in those settings. So, that excuse of, oh, we're not supposed to talk about it, that only applies to a tiled setting, and that's maybe once or twice a month. And that's even if you show up to those events, if you choose to. There are those that don't even do that. So for them, it's 100% of the time where they need to hold themselves to a higher standard. So, that's the point of me making this video without reading any script, or, without, having any talking points, is that it's probably existed before 2016, but the religious and racial divide that's existed needs to be tackled in a way where you educate everybody and bring them on a common ground. Sorry, I got cut off for a moment. But yeah, I believe these topics should be discussed, because our faith in, I guess, our political standpoint or our religious standpoint, they make us who we are. And I believe it's also have isolated, younger men from the craft. Like, they've been isolated from the older brethren, because the older brethren have a different point of view according to their own time and beliefs, and the younger ones have their own views. And instead of everybody coming together and having a respectful conversation where you can, I guess, meet on the level and learn about him, where he comes from, what he believes, he can learn about you, and you guys can still walk away as friends and as brothers. But now you even go online and you you write anything and the other person thinks you're attacking them, and there's a big fight that happens, and then everybody gets involved. So not subduing your passions and not living within due bounds is going against who we are, because we promised ourselves to hold ourselves to a higher standard compared to the profane world that's out here. So if we're not holding ourselves to a higher standard, and the concept of making men better, and by when you make men better, you make a better world. And I would say the world is divided now more than ever. And that should tell us something, that if we exist out here and this is what the situation is, then that means we are failing at who we are and what we're supposed to do. So you realize that that brother that you have a difference with, he's just like you. He has a family, he has hopes and dreams, he has jobs, responsibilities. When he goes to sleep, he thinks about the things that he could have done right instead of wrong, or things he should have not said, but the way he said it. So I'm telling you, we're all in this together. I want you to realize that and know that even if you're not to discuss these things, you have to know that majority of your time in today's world is spent in an environment where you can discuss those things. And we are a work in progress. We should learn about our brothers. They should learn about us, because having those restrictions limits your growth, and it limits your ability to be a free thinker, have free knowledge, and just be an ultimately person that's striving for excellence. And I would say even the most divide that I have seen is probably after 2016. The most divide that I've seen is after 2016, where you had this contest of egos and ideologies and beliefs that all contested with each other, not knowing that that was going to cause more damage than good. Now you fast forward now, we're almost in 2020, and you think, what good did any of that divide do to you, between your brothers, your friends, your family, with whom you had a disagreement with? Now this topic of discussing politics and religion not only applies to the brotherhood, but it also applies to American society as a whole, who's at each other's throats now more than ever, because each one has a point to prove, thinking that they're in some kind of contest, that's not how it should be. And that's what I think caused a lot of the younger brethren to kind of back away from the brotherhood in a way, and just focus on other things. And I was one of them, but I'm realizing as myself, as a work in progress at age 27, that there's a lot of lessons to be learned for both sides, for young and old. And that's why I guess I'm more involved in a way. And I would say, in a world full of darkness, if people like me are not putting in the effort and they're not bringing people together, then we hold that shared responsibility of the chaos that's occurring in the world. And we need to, because if I'm not going to do it, then who's going to take my place? And that's why what motivates me every day is that I need to keep up the good fight, because I want to unite everybody, regardless of their racial, religious, socioeconomic status, no matter what it is. And I encourage everybody that you do the same, and just keep it up, and wade off the darkness wherever you find it, whether it exists in the form of ignorance or people, and have those discussions that nobody's been having. Right? It's not about what acronym or number you have next to your name. That's only for this life. And in the eyes of Almighty God, our Supreme Grand Master, all that is null and void if you're avoiding talking about things that need to be talked about, and are not making the effort to bring your fellow man together, which is the most important thing, I believe, which in the next life I believe that's where your heart and the accountability that you have to go through. That's the most important thing, is what good did you do for yourself or your fellow man? It's not about what number or acronym you have to your name, how many awards did you win, like who stand up and clap for you. No, it's about what goodness did you leave behind, where people remember you. And the way that you teach others is through exemplification and through your own character, not by pushing your own viewpoints down theirs, and they're pushing it down to yours, and nobody's coming to a healthy agreement. Now, if me myself as a Muslim, if I can have relationships with Hindus, Muslims, Jews, Orthodox Christians, and we can all walk away as great friends and brothers with love for each other, and we discuss these things and know that at the same time we all desire the same things for ourselves and our families, then what did you lose by having that discussion rather than having a lock on your heart and on your mind that, oh, no, we're not going to talk about that? Why? Because then that encourages that divide where you promise to be a certain way to somebody, and when they see you outside of that setting, you might post something that, discards their whole race and their whole faith, and they will feel hurt by that, because we all have that inner child within us that needs healing. A lot of people out here, that's why there's a lot of psychological and emotional trauma here in America that has went unhealed, and that's projected as an adult because those things and some topics and some experiences, you were told to just bury them deep inside your heart and not to fully express yourself as a human being. And that's what has caused the divide too, where you live in a society where they have all the advancements of the world. They have access to education, plumbing, toilets, water, electricity, food at the grocery stores, local services, municipalities, but at the end, they walk by each other. Everybody is in a constant state of fear. Why? Because the agents of chaos, they don't want us to come together and sit down and be brothers with each other and learn about each other. And that term agent of chaos that I have kind of came up with is that applies to every race, religion, group, whatever you name it, because at this point I believe there's an internal spiritual struggle going on in every race, religion, organization, group, social status, or social groups, or whatever you name it. I've seen it, whether in a mosque or in a church, in a synagogue, in other places, in fraternities. There are these inner struggles going on because each one is in a point where they want to prove themselves, and this person's trying to prove themselves, and they're trying to put, like flame each other on social media to, elevate their own egos. But you think about it, that if you go to sleep tonight and you don't wake up, who did any of that benefit? Because you leave all of that behind. You're not going to take nothing with you. The egos, the agendas, the inner struggles, you're going right back 6 feet into the ground, right where you came from Mother Earth. So I believe that we do need to, many of us, no matter what our age or background is, because young and old are both guilty of this, in my opinion. We need to have a compromise, come together, sit together, right? Because that's what we're encouraged to do as brothers outside in social settings and or in each other's homes. It's sit down together and learn about each other and ask them, hey, what do you believe? I want to learn about you. And, okay, this is what I believe. This is what you believe. Let's meet in the middle where I respect you, you respect me, and together we create a beautiful world. Because you also realize that if everyone thinks the same thing or they behave the same way, then we create a very boring world. And this is not the world that Almighty God has intended for us to have. A beautiful world is made up of different tapestries and colors. And just people, whether they're in the brotherhood or politics or religion or wherever they are, they celebrate that. They don't want to be like, oh, if you don't believe what I believe, I don't want nothing to do with you. That's called being in an echo chamber, and that limits your growth. And young and old people in the brotherhood are guilty of this, where you can't even talk to somebody unless they think it's a direct attack on them. So, please, I make these videos because I have love for you and I want to educate you. Because I see no one else talking about things that need to be talked about, no matter what number or acronym they have next to their name. For me and in the eyes of Almighty God, that's meaningless if you're not making the effort to unite humanity and unite our brotherhood. And I would encourage them to also meet me in person so we could have these discussions as brothers and as men. So yeah, I would, just to sum up my video, I believe my friends and my brothers and whoever else is watching this is, you know that when you watch the news or you watch any medium out there, you realize that there's always an agenda, no matter what side he or she is taking, or what side is this person taking, what side is that person taking. And you realize nobody's talking about bringing people together. Everybody has their own viewpoint, because divide and conquer is the name of the game. And if we come together, that derails the whole agenda, because then there's no religion that divides people, there's no race, language, barrier, because we see a world without any laws or boundaries. And we see a world where the laws of man and the laws of the system that have divided us so far, kind of, you break away the chains in a way, and you see a world where you can create anything, a free world, a world where anything is possible, for me, for her, for him, for this person, for that person. Why? Because we chose the route of love, about coming together regardless of however you practice your religious belief, however you practice your political belief, knowing that you practice yours and you know that I practice mine, and we respect each other, and we know that at the end we're gonna have that same spiritual journey together, and we're all walking this path together. So please make the efforts to get to know your fellow man and have these difficult conversations, because in order for us to create a better world and to aid each other as brothers and as men, we need to break these barriers that have divided us thus far, and know that, okay, if this approach of us not being allowed to talk about it has done nothing but cause chaos and disturbance and divide so far, how about we try a different approach and see what we can get out of that, right? Because, with this, it hasn't done anything so far besides divide. So how about you make the effort to have a different approach and think about how can we bring each other together and have that love and unity and basic, humility restored in a world where we need it badly. So, that's to keep my video at an appropriate length. I think that should be it. If you have any questions, please send me an email. And I send my love to you always, and I pray that God blesses all of you and your families and all that you do. Thanks again.